If you were going to try to explain Synthwave to someone who didn't grow up in the 80s and 90s, you could probably just tell them to go watch Nemesis and that would about cover it. I'm not saying Nemesis encompasses all that Synthwave is, but it works as a kind of cultural avatar for what a big part of that music genre is trying to call back to. And even as I say that, I find it hard to be much more specific than to say that Nemesis just captures the vibe of a certain era that Synthwave, Retrowave, et al. Were inspired by. There are a few things worth mentioning though. There's that smooth Asian flute intro music, the smoky sax that comes in a little later, and a catchy repeating synth riff that is still stuck in my head days after watching the movie. It's got palm trees, Los Angeles, attractive characters who wear sunglasses indoors, it's cyberpunk. But like I said, that vibe is hard to explain. Just watch Nemesis and you'll get the vibe Synthwave is trying to recreate. In fact, I think you could easily rescore Nemesis with something from the back catalogs of Mitch Murder or Phaserland and lose absolutely nothing in the shuffle. And just look at that poster. It could easily be the cover art for an upcoming Starcadian album. I mean, it just practically oozes the Synthwave vibe. That's the spell Nemesis casts right off the bat. Whether Nemesis is able to do more than vibe is up for debate, but we'll get to that. But before we dig into the meat and potatoes, let's get the boilerplate stuff out of the way. Nemesis was produced by Imperial Entertainment on a reported budget of $2 million. It began its theatrical run in Japan on December 26, 1992, and was released in the US on January 29, 1993, and it went on to gross around $2 million. Nemesis was written by Rebecca Charles, a pseudonym for Albert Pyun, who was also the film's director. Now, the copy I reviewed was the MVD Rewind Collector's Edition. This release comes with a few different versions of the film, including a director's cut, the Japanese cut, and a high-def Blu-ray version. The Blu-ray version is by far the best-looking version in the set. I took a look at the Japanese version and the director's cut, but the Japanese version is so grainy it just doesn't do the movie justice. And the director's cut includes some very unfortunate CGI updates, if you even want to call them that. The Blu-ray looks very good, aside from some weird transfer artifacts here and there that most people, probably wouldn't even notice. The color grading, which I'll talk about in a little bit, looks great on this version. I generally like the stuff that MVD puts out. I also have their release of Split Second with Rutger Hauer, and another one that slips my mind at the moment. And they all come with 9x11 versions of the movie posters, which I really dig. The extras include interviews and commentary with Pyun, producer Eric Carson, and Olivier Gruner, the star of the movie, and some making of stuff. It's all worth it if you're into that sort of thing. In one of the interviews, Pyun talks about how a lack of money influenced his vision for the world of Nemesis. He explains that one of the benefits of working with smaller budgets is that it often afforded him the opportunity to explore ideas and styles that would have been unavailable to him on a more mainstream production. Mainstream productions just weren't willing to give him a bunch of money to go off and experiment. Pyun made a lot of movies. Most of them were low-budget genre pictures produced quickly for the home video market. And it's easy to dismiss his work outright if you come at it with mainstream expectations. But Pyun was an artist who understood his medium. Arguably, Pyun's most well-known film, Cyborg, remains a wildly entertaining action sci-fi movie that managed to create a whole fictional dystopian world on a budget of around $500,000. That movie went on to gross $10 million at the box office, but more importantly, it showcased Pyun's ability to turn budget limitations into a creative superpower. Pyun describes the world of Nemesis as high-tech in a low-tech world. That choice was stylistic, but it was also necessary. He couldn't have made the world look like that of Blade Runner if he'd wanted. Though that movie was a huge influence on him, those constraints forced him to create something different and interesting in its own way rather than a clone of an existing world. As a result, Nemesis is one of the best-looking B-movies you're ever going to see. The casting is excellent and fun. Everyone is attractive, athletic, and styled to the nines. Wardrobe, hair, sunglasses, even the weapons. This movie has style, man. One might even say it has pizzazz if one used such words. I never would. The cinematography, shot by George Moradian, punches way above the film's weight class. Though most of Moradian's work as a DP was on low-budget movies, and most of that on Pyun's films, some of the shots in Nemesis look like the work of a more prestigious DP. Carefully framed, thoughtfully staged, Nemesis looks far more elegant than most direct-to-video genre films of this era. Pyun and Moradian lean heavily on real locations, and that decision gives the movie a grounded quality that many higher-budget sci-fi films shot on soundstages just lack. The color grading in Nemesis is especially strong, and more importantly, intentional. The movie opens on an orange-soaked future Los Angeles, a blasted landscape ravaged by environmental collapse and unchecked crime. When the story shifts to Rio de Janeiro, the palette cools into deep blues, and the movie takes on a smoky, neo-noir flavor that feels confident and controlled. Later, when the action moves to Hawaii, standing in for the fictional Shang-Lu, the look changes again. The world becomes greener, more natural, almost Edenic. No obvious color filters were used for the rest of the film. At first, I was kind of bummed to see Nemesis move away from these bold color choices that characterized the first third of the movie. In fact, in my memory of the film, I remember more of it being graded in that orange color that's at the beginning. But anyway, the more I think about it, the more I think this was a conscious decision. There's an existential through line in the film that has the main character attempting to reclaim his humanity. It makes sense that the world around him would shift from claustrophobic, smog-choked dystopia towards something cleaner and more untouched by technology and pollution as his character progresses. Whether the script fully earns this theme is debatable, but visually the idea is sound filmmaking logic. Within minutes of pressing play on Nemesis, I was struck by another realization. And I don't know if others have made this connection, probably so, I'm guessing, but Nemesis feels like a kind of proto-Matrix. From the wardrobe to the sunglasses to the way the action is staged against urban architecture, the DNA is unmistakably the same. A character even says something about a Matrix chip at one point. I think it's the main character, Alex, played by Olivier Gruner. I'm not suggesting the Wachowskis ripped Pyun off, but the lineage is hard to ignore. Nemesis fits firmly in that same paranoid pre-Y2K cyberpunk vibe, heavily influenced by Blade Runner and William Gibson's Neuromancer. Whatever the case, the look of the film, in the broadest sense, is one of Nemesis's strongest selling points. And the cast is another one. Olivier Gruner as the main character, Detective Alex Rain, a Rick Deckard type character, isn't a great actor, and he doesn't have Van Damme's raw screen presence, but he's really no worse than Don the Dragon Wilson, and probably disguises some of his woodenness with his French accent. He looks great, does most of his own stunts as far as I could tell, and is a legitimately skilled martial artist. I really enjoyed him in the 1990 film Angel Town, directed by Eric Carson, who was also a producer on Nemesis. Based on his work in that movie, I was really hoping to see more hand-to-hand fight scenes in this, but apparently Imperial Entertainment was trying to expand his marketability as an action star, and so they wanted to ramp up the gunplay, which they do. Gruner is a black belt in Shotokan, the same martial art that Van Damme studied, and was the silver medalist in the 1985 WAKO World Kickboxing Championship. He was also a Green Beret in the French Navy and reportedly spent most of the time fighting pirates, which sounds pretty badass to me. And the whole supporting cast is stacked with genre regulars and fan pleasers. Actor, comedian, and B-movie veteran Tim Thomerson, known for his roles in Dollman and Trancers, brings a cool confidence to his character Chief Farnsworth that elevates every scene he's in. Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa shows up in the second half as the leader of a rebel group called the Red Army Hammerheads, cool name by the way, and immediately steals the show. I have a rule with movies. If Tagawa is in it, I'll watch it. This guy is so versatile and just oozes screen presence and charisma. Pyun noted in the extras that when he asked Tagawa if he'd ever heard of Hawaiian Pidgin, Tagawa just started riffing in Pidgin with no prep and no practice, which won him the role.
Hey, how's it, bruh? On behalf of the Shanglu Welcome Wagon, I'd like to introduce my right arm, Fran Terry. Angie Liv, yours truly.
All of the players hold their own well enough for a movie like this, but Tagawa and Thomerson are just operating on a whole other level. Brian James, who played a replicant in Blade Runner and is always fun to see in these old genre movies, and Nicholas Guest, Christopher Guest's less successful younger brother, are the main bad guys' henchmen, and they seem to have been cast to chew all the scenery, which they do. I guess craft services just weren't great on these low-budget movies. Thomas Jane, a.k.a. The Punisher, and Jackie Earle Haley, a.k.a. Rorschach, appear briefly, but it's fun to see them in these early roles. Vincent Klin, the bad guy from Cyborg, plays a cyborg here, but has very little screen time, unfortunately. Marjorie Monahan, known for her run on Babylon 5, plays Jared, a rogue cyborg and Alex's former handler and lover. Yuji Okamoto from Karate Kid 2 and Cobra Kai plays one of Tagawa's lieutenants. I really enjoyed seeing him in Cobra Kai, and it was a welcome surprise when he popped up here. He brings a bit of levity to a few scenes, and he's just fun to see in this. Former beauty queen and body double star Deborah Shelton shows up as Julian, a cyborg fighting on the side of humanity. Her scenes are pretty wild. One scene involves a fight with Thomas Jane while both actors are fully nude. According to producer Eric Carson, the two of them went so hard on that fight scene that Thomas Jane ended up bloody as a result. And apparently he was such a pro and chill about it that he insisted on using it for the scene. What a Chad. The other bonkers scene involving Shelton is one of the film's most violent shootout scenes, and there are many of those, with Shelton's character being literally shot in two. I forget who said this in the DVD extras, but apparently they cast a double amputee to sell the scene of Julian dragging her cybernetic guts across the floor to try to reach a nearby gun. It's pretty gruesome. Alex's third act sidekick, Max Impact, yeah, you heard that right, is played by newcomer Merle Kennedy. Despite no previous acting work, Kennedy does a surprisingly good job, rendering a character that is quirky and sympathetic, and grounding the film's final act in some much-needed humanity. Pyun says in the commentary that Kennedy was a deadhead prior to being cast as Max. I didn't know that was a career, but anyway. Conan the Barbarian alum Sven Ole Thorsen shows up as a henchman also. Was he a henchman in all of these movies from this era? Anyway, he gets wasted by an old lady in one of the movie's rare comedic moments. It's definitely worth seeing, and you'll know it when you see it. Genre veteran Tom Matthews from The Return of the Living Dead and the Friday the 13th franchise plays a cyborg who has a pretty cool fight scene with Gruner where they slide down a huge cement slide and fight over a gun. It's just one more insane set piece in a movie full of insane set pieces. And finally, Branscombe Richmond, most famous for his role as Bobby Sixkiller in the television show Renegade, shows up in the film's opening battle in a blink and you will miss him role. Which is too bad. I really like that actor and would have loved to have seen him a bit more in this movie. And yet, for all these check marks in Nemesis's plus column, sadly, the movie is narratively kind of a mess. I watched Nemesis just a few days ago, and even now I'm struggling to remember what exactly the plot was. I mean, the broad brushstrokes are there for sure. Near future Los Angeles 2027, Alex Rain, played by Gruner, is a police detective tasked with retiring rogue cyborgs. After the film's big opening action set piece, Alex is actually revealed to be partially synthetic himself, the result of injuries sustained in the line of duty. Forced into one final job involving stolen data, a rogue operative, and a shadowy conspiracy to replace humans with cyborg duplicates, Alex is not only fighting to save the world, but his own humanity. That's the version that makes sense on paper anyway. In practice, Nemesis' plot is pretty murky. Relationships are underdeveloped, to say the least. Emotional beats are rushed or implied rather than dramatized. And narrative tension is traded for all the action. Now, this is where Nemesis both shines and kind of sabotages itself. The action is excellent for the most part. Pyun stages fights and chases with energy and imagination, and Gruner sells the physicality of it all, no problem. It's worth mentioning a specific scene in the Shanglu Hotel where Gruner literally shoots his way through several floors of the building, falling all the way to the basement and escaping Farnsworth and his henchmen. That scene alone is worth watching this movie for. It's inventive in the way it's staged as a practical effect and in the way it's set up from a technical perspective. And it calls to mind a scene in The Matrix when Neo and the gang are hiding in the walls and have to drop several stories to escape the agents. Truly memorable stuff. The problem is that Nemesis becomes too enamored with these set pieces. The action keeps escalating, layering spectacle on top of spectacle until it starts to feel numbing rather than exhilarating. And momentum eventually gives way to fatigue. By the time it reaches its climax, the whole thing sadly goes completely off the rails. There's a stop motion endoskeleton that might have been fine if it had been used sparingly. After all, Gene Warren Jr. was the effects supervisor on Nemesis, and he's only the guy who worked on 2 Terminator movies and won an Oscar for it. But then there's a sequence involving a futuristic jet taking off from a volcano where the endoskeleton hangs from it, and the whole thing looks like it belongs in an entirely different movie. It's as if someone took To Live and Die in LA and grafted parts of Hell Comes to Frogtown on it. That's how jarring it is. And it almost ruins the movie. Not because it erases the good work that came before, but because it so violently clashes with the tone Nemesis had just spent 90 minutes establishing. It's like putting a camper shell and bullhorns on the front of a brand new Ferrari. You just scratch your head and wonder, why'd they do that? There is a temptation, especially in our current era of hot takes and YouTube clickbait, to overstate Nemesis's importance. It's not better than Cyborg, it's not secretly a masterpiece either, and Pyun's not the secret genius behind the Matrix, though that probably would have been a great clickbait thumbnail to lead with. But as a late 80s, early 90s cyberpunk artifact, it's absolutely a worthy entry in the canon. Its influence is real, its aesthetic confidence undeniable, and its ambition admirable, even when it collapses under the weight of its own excesses. Is it deep? No. I think it kind of wanted to be. Whether that failure stems from Pyun's limitations as a writer or interference in the editing room is hard to say. And the Blu-ray extras muddy the waters more than they clarify them. Pyun implies that jealousy led producer Carson to sabotage the film, but he also freely admits his original version had Alex as a 13-year-old girl working undercover for LAPD. Carson, on the other hand, is a consummate gentleman and has only glowing things to say about Pyun in the extras interviews. So it's hard to know who's to blame for Nemesis's shortcomings. Probably, as is often the case with complex things like movies, it's a mixture of things. But what is clear is that Nemesis is a movie worth watching. It's fun. It looks great, and for the most part, it's got great action, although I would have liked to have seen a few more kicks from Gruner. But if you care about cyberpunk, if you love low-budget genre filmmaking from this era, if you need to explain what Synthwave is to someone who is clueless about it, or if you're a fan of The Matrix, Nemesis is required viewing. Alright, that's it for this one. If you're into movies like this, hit the like button. And if you have a movie you'd like me to review, drop me a comment and I'll add it to my list. Oh, and consider subscribing to Kung Pu Video, where we rewind the weird ones, the deep cuts, the movies that raised us when nobody was watching. Neon memories, late nights, a kind of magic. Be kind, subscribe. Before I go, I want to shout out another project I'm part of. Screen Age Wasteland is a collab project that started several years ago between me and some friends. It started simply as a place for a small community of film fans to chat about movies and TV, and has grown into a larger archipelago of content production, with several contributing writers from all over the world. You'll find news, reviews, and lists of all sorts over at screenagewasteland.com, and a great commenting community. And if you're into longer form content and deeper dives into great movies, check out our Canon podcast and award season commentary over at our YouTube channel at Screen Age Wasteland. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.